Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Good, Baruch Hashem. How's your day?
Busy.
Good for you. Good.
How was yours?
Hanging in there. Good. Good. Good.
Yeah, I had to go. I still don't have the results from my test that I took Monday.
What? That shouldn't take so long.
I don't know. I must have gone to the wrong place.
Did you
A
get?
girl in the office went to the Dodger Stadium and she had the results in 24 hours.
Oh boy! Did you? There's a line. Could you? I see on TV the line around Dodger Stadium. How long do you have to wait in line to get it?
I don't know, but I had to wait 1 minute where
Really?
I went. But the problem is they told me 2 days, maybe 3.
Oh boy!
I've gone through the 3 days already. It's a place, and I'm not gonna go anymore there. It's in Venice and Calder.
Are you coughing at all? Are you okay, huh?
No, it's because somebody in the office
Oh
came
yeah.
out positive, and they don't want me to go back, nor anybody else for that matter, until they have a negative result.
Wow. Well, I mean, how long does if somebody's in the office and you get it, do you get it right away, or takes a few days until it becomes a person?
I don't know how long that person had it.
No, but if a person has it and you're exposed, when does the exposure come out on the other person?
I don't know. We have a doctor on the screen. Let's ask him. Harold?
What's the question?
Hi.
How long does it take to get exposed?
Hi. Does it come right away?
Bobistu.
We're on the way to the Grand Canyon.
Very nice. Very nice. Enjoy.
Good for you. Yeah, wow.
The Grois Allah.
The Grois Allah. We're on Kuf Aleph, Ahmed Bay's on the bottom, 101. Nagar Sheyesh Barosho Glustra. You have like a door bolt that has a knob on it. So Rabbi Eliezer prevents you from sticking it into the threshold of the door to seal the door, because it looks too much like binyan. Rabbi Yossi says it's not binyan because the bolt it's like a key, it's like a kli. So nobody's gonna confuse it for binyan. Rabbi Eliezer Ma'aser b'knes B'Tveria, so you know I can go ahead there. In Tveria, they used to treat this leniently. And Rabbi Yossi said the opposite. Isser Na'agubo, there was a previous minig to prohibit Ubara Galiav Azkenim V'Tiru Lahan. So the Gemara analyzed, B'Nitil Ba'ogdo, let's say there's a string attached to the bolt, and you can pull the bolt with the string, Kulamaloi Pligi, that is permitted. Since it's tied and hanging, it's clear that it's used to lock the door, and it's not Mechzi Kaboina. No one's going to be confused that you're building something. Ki Pligi B'Shena Nitel Ba'oigdo. If it doesn't have a string attached to it, it's a very thin string that if you pulled it, it would break off. You wouldn't be able to pull the bolt out of where it is. And therefore, it's treated as if it's not tied, because having the bolt tied to the door is a leniency. If it's free standing away from the door, and then you stick it into the threshold to lock it, so then it looks too much like boina, like a nagar amunach she'ena kosher bedelis, where we're going to see that ain't no alim bo. So if the string is too flimsy to be able to move the bolt when you pull it, it's as if it's lying free. And Demar Savar, the other mandamar who was matir, kiven diyesh barosho glustera, since there's a knob on top of, on part of this bolt, so taras kli alav. It's a kli. Nobody's going to be confused that you're being boina here. Umar Savar kiven it doesn't make a difference. Since it can't be moved with the string, it's not considered a kli. Then the Mishnah says, Nagar hanigrar, you have a bolt that's tied to the door, but it's not suspended. It's hanging on the ground. So there, it doesn't look like it's tied. So people who see it, it's like a marasayan. So negra noah, the din is in the Beis HaMikdash, where rabbinic gzeiras ain't shavus b'mikdash, so there's no rabbinic gzeira noyam b'mikdash. You could use such a bolt to lock a door in the Beis HaMikdash. Avalo b'mdina, but not outside the Beis HaMikdash. The hamunach, if it's not tied at all, if it's just lying on the ground, certainly kan v'kan osir, it would be osir everywhere. That it would be that would be like a doraisa. Everyone would hold that it's binyan. It's not a gzeira. And that's why even in the Migdash, it would be osir. Rabbi Yehuda Munach, he's not so stringent. Hamunach mutar b'migdash. He says munach, we're not going to be worried that people are going to think it's binyan. It's just a gzeira. And therefore, since we learned Ein Shavus b'migdash, you're allowed to do it in the Migdash. But Vanikra b'Medina, if it's dragging on the ground, but tied to the door, he would allow it. He's lenient in both cases. Toner Rabbanon, Ezeu Nagra Nigrar. What is one of these bolts that's dragging, which is permitted Shenoalim b'Migdash, Avalo b'Medina, but not in the Medina? Kosher v'tolui. It's tied, it's hanging from the door. The Rosho Echad Magilar, the whole bolt doesn't have to be lying on the ground, just one part of it. So that type you could use in Migdash and not in Medina. You'd be allowed to use this even in the Medina. So what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? What is the kind of bolt that you would not be able to use in the Medina? It's not tied or suspended. Vishamto, it's been removed from the door. It's put as a separate thing. So it's a gzeira this way. So that's why the Beis HaMikdash is permitted. But outside, in the Medina, it's not permitted. But only because that would not be still not be a deraisa according to Rabbi Yehuda. We are lenient like Rabbi Yehuda regarding this type of bolt. Omer Rava, we're lenient v'husha kosher bedelis, as long as it's tied to the door. Mar says Amy. Rabbi Tavla ikla mechuza, Rav Tavla visit mechuza v'chazal ahuda v'toli be'ivr dedasha. It was hanging. It was not the door itself. It was like it was like another bolt that's connected to the door. So it wasn't connected to the door. So how could Rav say he should kosher bedelis? This was not tied to the door, and yet they permitted. He didn't say anything. Lo amar lev lo midi. So the Gemara says, "Ahu nitzel bo'ogdo have." Yeah, but the reason why there was not a problem is because there was a string that they could pull on and it removed it. So like we said in the previous Mishnah, that if it's a string that you could move the bolt, everybody would hold that it's permitted. Rav Avia Iklal Nardo. Rav Avia visited Nardo. Chazilu Gavri saw a person davikakoter begemi. Gemi is like reeds, so it's not like a string. A reed's not going to hold on to the bolt very firmly. Omar din loy nitrik. You can't use this as a bolt for the door because it looks like binyan, because the rope, if you use this reed to pull the bolt, it wouldn't pull the bolt, it would break. It's not strong like a rope. Boy Rav Zera, nikmaz mao. Nikmaz is the bolt that's actually put into the ground itself. On Rav Yosef, mighty boile. What's the question? Lo shmile haditanya nishmat osir. That means if a bolt is free and clear away from the door. So such a bolt you can't use because it looks too much like binyan. And nikmaz, which means this bolt is put into the ground, mutter. Yet Rav Yudah Amar nikmaz, aval pishen nishmat osir. That if you put it in the ground, it's prohibited. The time of why are we prohibiting by putting it in the ground? That looks too much like boina. And in Echadami, that's the halacha. What about asalo beis yad? What if they made a handle to the bowl? Does that make it look like a kli, and therefore there would not be binyan? That's like when you make spices, like a mortar and pestle. And that certainly would be like a kli, and therefore you would not be chayiv if you put that kind of thing with a handle, because it would be a kli, people would not confuse it with binyan. Itmarav Chumi Barada, Asla Beis Yad Mutter. He brings a raya that it's permitted if you use a handle. Hahushar Yisa, like a plank of wood. Davibe Rav Padas, that was at the home of Rav Padas. Davimadlo Be'asara. It was so heavy that 10 people would be needed to move it. Vishadu Le'adasha, they sort of put it next to the door in order to lock the door so that people couldn't get in. V'lo Amar Lo Midi. Why isn't this considered like binyan? Amar Torah's Kli Aleh. It's considered a Kli, and therefore there's no binyan. Hahu Asita. Asita, we said a mortar and pestle, and asita is a mortar. That's that thing that you grind the spices with. Davi Beimar Shmuel, Davi Machzik Adriva. It was also used, it was pretty big. The Machzik Adriva means it could hold like a large amount of grain. So it was a pretty large item. And they used that, Sharamesh Marshmuel and Mishri Adosha. They also allowed this to be sort of propped up against the door to prevent the door from opening. And why wasn't this binyan? Because Torah's Kli Allah. It's considered a Kli, even though it's very big. Shalach le Rabbi Bar Yecheskel Rav Amram. Nemelan Mar, please tell us, Malin Milam Ayusa, nice Vortlach, the Amrit Lot Mishmei de Ravasi Bekipi de Arba. That Ravasi said regarding these are beams on a boat that a whole row of them is placed so you could sit under them. Sholach lehachiyam Ravasi, hani kipi de arba bisman sheyesh ben tefach. As long as they're a tefach wide, or inami ein beim tefach, but ve'en bezel zeh shlosha, as long as there's not 3 tfachim between each one of these beams, so you use lavud, lemachar on Shabbos, maybe machzel supor salen. The beams that already create sort of a temporary ohel. And you did this before Shabbos. So now when you come and you put a blanket over this and you make a tent, you're allowed to do it. You're not allowed to build an oil on Shabbos, my time, huh? Moisif al oil aroihu. You're only adding to a previous temporary tent, b'shapir dami. And that's permitted. Hanu dichri, there were these rams, the havalil Ravuna that Ravuna had, to be a mama during the daytime, bo tula. He covered their pen with shade. Uvalele boyavir. And then at night, he wanted to give them more ventilation so they could breathe. Also, Rav Amalei, zilkrach budya. You can, from Erev Shabbos, you can roll up this material that served as the shade, but leave shayber tefach. But lamachar, during the daytime, when you want to have more shade again, pashto moisif alol. It's already been built from Erev Shabbos, so it's a temporary oil. You could be moisif on a temporary oil. V'shapir dami would be permitted to do this. Amrav mishum Rav Chia, vilon, a curtain, mutzul and toisoy.
If you had a sukkah with 4 walls and it starts to rain, so you could take a covering on the side, add on to it to keep the rain from coming in, because it's not considered a mosif. It's not. It wouldn't be a marsayan, right? Because you have already there. It'd be the same thing as we just said now, by adding on to it. Since it's already there, the walls are there. It doesn't look like a binyan. Would you say that'd be right?
No, because I'm not sure a sukkah qualifies as an oil. Here they're talking about an oil aroy. So an oil kavua you can't add on, but an oil aroy you can. I'm not sure a sukkah qualifies for that. The sukkah is more of a binyan. The binyan aroy, it's not an oil. And the din is, I don't think you're allowed, if it starts raining, you're not allowed to put a sheet up there you're not allowed, I don't think the Maisa were allowed to do that. That's why if it starts raining, you have to go inside. You can't spread on Yontif something underneath the schach, I don't believe, for this very reason. Because I think it's not a din of oil, but it's a question that we have to answer. Amarav Mishum Rav Chia vilon, a curtain, mutter, you can hang it in a doorway. Mutter leforko b'Shabbos, you can put it on, take it off on Shabbos.
Ernie, maybe that case of an oil aroy would be like when kids make a fort in the house, out of chairs and blankets. Could you add on? Could you spread more out?
Well, but remember, Kenny, there in these cases that the Gemara said it's mutter, some of the construct was done Erev Shabbos. So now when Shabbos comes, you can add on it that was previously done. But to build it lechatchila on Shabbos, you can't build an oil aroy either. But you could be moisif on an oil aroy. So that which was prepared from Erev Shabbos, they could add on to it. Now, kilas chasanim. That's like a canopy over a bed. But the kilas chasanim was like a V. Was not like a canopy that we know. It was like a teepee. Like just a string, and then you would hang a curtain. And they would use, the bridegroom would sleep under this kind of kilas chasanim. You can set it up and take it down on Shabbos. Because it's not considered like you've made an oil. Lav oil hu. To be considered an oil, you have to have at least a tefach of horizontal roofing. If it comes to a V, it would not qualify as an oil. Right? It's got to be a straight, like the picture in Rashi. as long as there's not a horizontal area flat of a tefach. Aval yesh b'gag tefach osir. And there's a few other qualifications to make it mutter. V'chiein b'gag tefach, even when it comes to a point, lo amar and she'ein b'pachos b'shlosh samach l'gag tefach. It's got to be pretty a very narrow angle where less than 3, it goes up 1 and 3, no slope more than that. If it's wide, osar, then, right, if you don't get to the width, if it doesn't, if it's very wide, then it's almost like as if you have a tefach. And that would invalidate doing that on Shabbos. The slope has to be less than the tefach. It's got to be a very, very high, very tight angle. It's considered like an oil would not be permitted. On Rav Shisha Bred Ravidi, Saina Shari. You're allowed to wear a hat on, even though it's got a wide brim. It's not an oil. Latanya Osir, Loikasha, Hadi Ispe Tefach, Hadi Lespe Tefach. So if the brim is more than a tefach, it's Osir to wear such a hat because you're basically creating an oil. Elameyata Sharvi Beglima Tefach, Achanami de Osir. So if you're wearing, like, let's say a talus over your head, or they used to wear like a cloak, like Baba Sali, those kind of, that's a hood. So if it extends more than the tefach, you're going to tell me that that's osir? So no. The issue of a hat is it's got to be well-fitting. If the hat doesn't fit well, it could fall off, and then you could end up carrying down the spiritual rabbim, then we prohibit. But the issue of a broad-brimmed hat, that's not correct. It could be very broad. And we've seen people with brims that are more than a tefach, and I don't believe that it's usher based on this Gemara. Mishnah. Machzirin sira tachton, so the tzir is the door hinge. You have an upper hinge and a lower hinge. Now, let's say the lower hinge comes undone. So in the Beis HaMikdash, you can return the lower hinge to its, you can fix it, the Beis HaMikdash, because it's only Gzeir Midrabanan. Avalo b'Medina. But outside Beis HaMikdash, it's a Gzeir Midrabanan, we're not allowed to do it. Now, to fix the upper hinge, kan v'kan osir, then it's binyan shalim, and it's osir no matter what, whether it's in the Beis HaMikdash or not. And Rabbi Yehuda again is more lenient. Ha'elyon has only been Mikdash permitted to be machzir v'atachton b'Medina. So he doesn't hold that he holds that even fixing the elyon is only Gzeir Midrabanan, therefore it's permitted in the Mikdash. Rabbanon, tzir delet sheda tevo migdal, the hinge of a door of like a china closet or a big box. So b'migdash machzirin, you can be machzir it. If it hasn't come out completely, it's just dislodged, and you can put it back in the Beis HaMikdash. But b'medina doichakin, that means in the outside the Beis HaMikdash, if it came out completely, you can't return it. But if it's just out a little bit, you can. If it's not completely dislodged, even outside of the Beis HaMikdash, you can put it back in. That's only the bottom. But va'elyon kan v'kan lo yachzir, you can't even be machzir. If it came out a little bit, you can't return it because gzer shem yitaka, you might use a hammer. And if imtaka chayv chatas. because that would be a melacha deraisa. Now, a door of a bor or a dus, these are little, like an outhouse for shal yatzia. Place to store water, and they had a door, lo yachzir. That's mamish binyan, vim hichzir chayv chatas. Mishnah. Machzir retir b'migdash. Let's say a kohen had a wound on his arm, and he had a bandage. So Chachamim prohibited lechatchila placing a bandage with medicine on a wound because of gzeira shchika samamanim. You're going to grind the medicines. But let's say he already had it on. And now to do the avoda, it's a chatzitza. You can't have anything between your hand and the korban. So you can remove the bandage temporarily to do the avoda, and then you can be machzirid. So that's only in the base of Mikdash that you're avalo b'mdina. B'mdina, for example, if it fell off, you wouldn't be allowed to return it. Certainly you can't put it in the chatchila. Right? In bechatchila kan v'kan osir, it would be prohibited in both places. It's still a shvuas. It's still a gzer drabonon. It's not to return it or even to put it l'chatchila. It's only gzer drabonon. Why don't we get rid of it in the mikdash? Because it's loy l'tzarech avoida. The only reason we allowed to remove it and put it back on is if the coin is doing a korban. Otherwise, you can't return it. Torah Rabbanon, Ritiya, Shapir Shemal Gabi Maka. The bandage was that separated from the wound. Machzirin b'Shabbos, you can return it on Shabbos. Rav Yehuda Omer Huchlaka Lamata, if it slipped, you can push it back, Doich Lamala. If it slipped up, Lamala Doich Lamata. And Megala Mixas Aratia, you can reveal some of the wound, Umekanech Piyamaka, to clean it. B'choizer Megala Mixas Aratia, and again, you can sort of remove some of it, Umekanech Piyamaka, you don't remove the whole thing at once and put it back. To avoid that, you slide it down and clean, slide it up and clean. Retiat Maloi Kanech. You cannot clean or do anything to the bandage itself. You're smoothing it out. That's your chayv chatas for doing it. Amir Amar Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Allah is like him. Amar Chizah Loishan Ela Shapir Shel Gabi Kli. When are you allowed to return it? If the bandage was put like on a pillow or something, not on the ground. Aval Pir Shel Gabi Karka Divra Kol Osir. If it was put on the ground, then everybody holds its osir. It's like putting it on initially. It's like doing it l'chatchila. Amar bar Ravashi, I have a kamina kamei abba. I was in front of my father. Naftalei abba sadya v'kamahaderlei. I guess the bandage fell off. He returned it. Aminalei, and I said lo savar lo mar lahadu amar of chizda machloika shapir shel gabi kli. That there's a leniency if it fell on a pillow or some other kli. Aval pir shel gabi karka aser. V'amar shvalach Rabbi Yehuda. So how could you do it? I don't agree. I didn't agree with the stringency. Mishnah. Koishanima b'migdash. Avaloi b'migdash. They used to play musical instruments, the Levium. And if one of the strings broke, you could tie it in the migdash, but not the Medina. But it's only if it was originally tied and broke. In betchila kan v'kan aser. L'chatchila, you can't string an instrument from the beginning. Anything you can do from the day before is not permitted to do on Shabbos if you could have done it before. Nimas kinor string of a guitar, right, or piano, or harp, shenifsika, that tore, broke, laya koshra, they didn't tie it, ela oinva, they made a bow. So our mission said you can tie it. So loikasha, Rabbon, Rabbi Yezer. It's machloikas. Rabbi Yezer dama machshir mitzvah doichlas Shabbos. There's a mitzvah to use a kli shir on in the avodah. So Rabbi Yezer Demila holds that, right, over there by Bris, he said you're allowed to boil water on Shabbos. Anything that hechsher mitzvah, you is doicha Shabbos. We chacham don't agree with that. But Rabbi Yezer says even a hechsher mitzvah, you can be doicha Shabbos. So according to him, koishra, since the mitzvah is to play the instrument, so tying it is a hechsher mitzvah. So you're allowed to do hechsher mitzvah. Rabbanan damri ein doichin hechsher mitzvah. So oinva, you can tie it only with a bow. So then, if Rabbi Yezer says hechsher mitzvah is allowed, so then why did we say in the Mishnah lechatchila you can't do it? It's only if it was there and then it broke. According to the way we're learning, Rabbi Yezer should allow you to do it lechatchila. So in fact, in a chanami, Rabbi Yezer wouldn't allow you to do lechatchila. Rather, our machlokas is different. Eloi kasha, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanon. It's a different machlokas which we'll go into tomorrow. This machlokas Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanon. Okay, so tomorrow we'll learn at 9:00.
Ernie, I sent you an email. Did you get my email?
When?
To